but actually I'm in your consciousness right now. But just be aware of the space we're in. And now let's start our meditation. So start to observe your breath. Start to observe your breath and don't manipulate it. And notice that even as you observe it, it slows down. Your mind will wander. When you become aware that it wanders, bring it back to your breathing. As it goes in through your nostrils and then out through your nostrils. Okay, now we're going to do something very interesting. You may keep your eyes open, but start to repeat your full name. So I am Deepak Chopra. I am Mary Jo. Repeat it mentally. And now invite all the stresses you have right now, all the things you have to do, your deadlines, all the problems you have. Invite them. Let your awareness fill up with them. Okay, now drop your last name. Just repeat your first name. I am Deepak. Mentally. And this time, invite experiences from your childhood into your awareness. When you were listening to your parents, your siblings, your school, your classmates, happy days, not so happy days. And now drop your first name. Just say I am, with no labels attached. I am. Let memories and thoughts fade. Just I am. Now if you want, you can replace I am with aham or om. Just a sound. No associations. Let's do it for a few seconds. Aham. Aham. Now even let that go. Sit quietly and just be aware of being aware. This is our ground state before a thought arises, before a feeling. It's who we really are. A field of infinite potential. Rest in being. Rest in awareness. Rest in existence. Just be. Okay, before we come out, feel all the sensations in your body. I hope you're feeling a little refreshed. You can do this again and do it as often as you want, and you can do it for longer. Thank you.
Just an introduction, and perhaps we can do it for a little bit longer if you guys don't mind. All right, since we have quorum, we're still waiting for Pete, but we'll just keep going. Call to order. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. 27th of January by myself. Let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance and the Goethe School Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a citizen of the world, I will follow Goethe's circle of learning. Curiosity opens my mind, ideas lead to knowledge, responsible choices show respect, cooperation strengthens others, learners are courageous, empathy creates community. Als ein Bürger dieser Welt, Vogel ist des Geistes des Lernens, neugierig, ideereich, respektvoll, kooperativ, mutig, empathisch.
Thank you, Kathy. All right, we shall move on to roll call. Frank? Present. Beacon?
Here.
And as I mentioned, Pete will be joining us shortly. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as with an amendment. I'd like to move up the SARC, the school accountability report card, before the update on the site expansion conversation, and also I would like to table the board development section, potentially because we might go over. A second? And I'm sorry, is there anything?
Did you want to also adjust the finance committee report ahead of the meeting?
Correct. And Chris has also asked if we can move the finance committee report ahead of the ED report because
Ryan's a little under
Ryan's a
the
little under the weather
weather.
and is he here?
I told him we have a
Okay.
session, so.
Okay, perfect. All right. Is that all right? Seconded? All in favor? Aye. All right. Approved. The agenda is amended. We will then move on to closed session and we'll go to room 51. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. All right.
We will be back. So we imagine this will take about 20-25 minutes.
I'm here.
Where's 51?
Where is 51?
Library.
Right there. Oh, it's the library.
Across the. Can you help me connect the?
Yes.
Do you
I-
want any pizza? There's pizza.
I think I'm next, right there. Yeah, it should be right next there. Thank you.
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
Just so you know, the camera recording is still on.
Scott, if
So-
Pete comes, can you send me the room 51?
Pete?
Pete.
Of course. Okay. What next there?
Let's bring it over here.
I can also just put it on here.
Which is that?
It's just a USB. If you have something else, or if not, we just connect the laptop
Yeah,
to that.
maybe just connect your laptop. Do you want a clicker? I have a clicker.
Oh, so it should be just easy, right? Just do it here.
Oh, no.
You have a newer one.
If you're not using it.
Mine I'll use, but this one. Just the presentation and I'll ask you a few questions. So this is the opening for questions. Yeah.
Yeah, there is some. See if it may. It's supposed to be, I know that.
You're okay.
Are you printing too?
Yeah, are you printing?
I just printed some. Working.
What happened with job status? Okay.
This one takes a long time to wake up.
I think they're moving in there.
Me too. Oh, is that your work, Kathy?
What? No, I put the sign that Beacon wrote the words, I put up a piece of paper, because she said, can we turn it on? I said, I want to put it as an office sign on here, otherwise we'll forget. Alright, I'm going to my classroom.
You
If I
don't
don't
know?
come back, send a search team.
You don't have to go to the north?
Yeah, it's really loud.
In the shed, to ask them
Yeah, because that's something we can actually do.
in theory we have
Hello.
licenses there. So you can see what we there, and then I rehearse it all.
Oh, hey, wow.
But there's a couple of other kids that should come
Yeah.
and see
Okay.
there. But here's sort of how.
So
you start with
recording,
the.
so be mindful that you're on YouTube right now.
Oh, that's right. We're being recorded. It's being broadcast.
Oh, okay. Hi. Oh, that's fun.
This is how it's seen, but we have a video of our
Oh,
campaign.
really?
There. Then you'll see the whole thing later.
Okay.
But that's sort of like a 30-second intro.
Nice.
And then
You're great.
then we're gonna start and say like, hey, we start the year with our classroom presentation,
Yeah.
and then introduce you
Okay.
with Coco.
Okay.
And I have a series of slides, not the whole presentation, but a series of slides
Yeah, sure. That's
of
great.
the 2 days.
Great. Wow. See that? Look at that.
Then we're gonna talk about ambassadors. Oh, and
Hello.
so Rasmus, check this out. So we'll talk about ambassadors. And then we've started actually going with the kids, like the kids doing the recycling.
Yeah.
So here's another video.
Perfect.
Oops, sorry. On that video, there's the kids taking the recycling to the lunch area.
Yeah.
But part of what we get to is that there's still waste.
Yeah.
So Rasmus, and this is one of the first grade ambassadors that they're having ideas of how to do away without using the trays for hot dogs.
Yeah.
So Rasmus, when you see this, I'm gonna talk that after bringing the recycling bins to lunch, that there's students that want to, have ideas how to deal with hot lunch. This is a little video of Eileen, and you'll come and then you say, you give your ideas about using the reusable trays. So Rasmus is in the student council, wants to see if we can use plastic trays. Oh, and Nathan is also going to student ambassador, and then community building, community events. We're going to talk about simple, small ideas, so cutting pizza boxes, using them in the garden. This is an idea that we want to explore with Martina about. That's why you got all these texts this morning.
Yeah, I was confused, but
And then we'll go into beach cleanup.
oh, perfect. What a great.
No, so then and hopefully Helena will come, and then she'll invite everybody to come in June.
Perfect.
And then that's that.
Nice.
So it should be all between 5 and 10 minutes maximum.
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah,
We'll try
just
that.
up your
So
Alex.
we can, then at the end, when we're done, okay, since we'll end up with cleanup, you can go back with the plastic bags and say like, okay, board members, do you want to play a game? I think it's like 3 or 4 of those. We can go get more.
I think that's it.
So you can tell them. Do you want to grab the app?
Maybe, yeah. I just run there. Because as we had 10 minutes.
Or do you want to go?
No, you stay here. Otherwise, well, I mean, I don't think I want to.
Because they're in the. No, if you wanna.
On the right, right? In this drawer. To the right. In the plastic drawer.
But let's go.
Okay. Okay.
I think we're in good.
In good shape? I
So
mean,
that's
looks.
one of the ideas. So perfect. In that part of the national presentation, when I say
She can open it.
They're in the closed section over here, so we walk you over.
Oh, perfect. She can talk about, for example, the game, the recycling game and stuff. Maybe that's it. What did you have?
no, you can do Okay, well, I go to the shed, so I'll be right back.
Should I join you?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Okay, you want to come with me? Or you want to stay here?
Wo gehst du hin?
Ich hole nur diese Spiel. Du bleibst hier? Okay.
So you, at that point, I'm gonna ask you to come, and then we should be recycling the plants. We're gonna use the water bottle. Should I do it?
Yeah, I don't know if we're done my water bottle. We were gonna go to Target after, and she got 2 bowls. There's a lot of people asking like, I was like the only one that ate the cheese bowl, and I literally just ate all of them.
No,
So, I can never figure that out.
That's right, because I live but I Google it all the time. How to open the.
It's like a bakery.
And
Okay.
then you find it. Like,
I'll be right back.
Were you guys using my pickers yet? I saw some kids grabbing the pickers from my classroom.
All I remember is at recess, I saw people take your pictures and then they're like putting tabs with them like.
Oh, see, this was my problem. Normally, you know my expectations on it, but not everybody else does. When they were asked to be put out, I'm like, I don't know about this because, hey, Mr. Michelson, tomorrow, during tomorrow's assembly, can I have a discussion with the school? It's been asked that I leave my pickers, my trash pickers out so kids can use them. I would like to just go over a reminder of rules and expectations if you're going to use the pickers.
Please, because I observed a couple of
Yeah,
things
it really did concern me when I did not have a speech and put them out there.
Yeah.
So, I would like to do that if that could happen.
Yes.
We used to have a paper at home, but it kind of broke.
Yeah,
Most students were using them very responsibly.
yeah, and that way the IAs also here, I grabbed, what's the one IA in second grade, dark hair, wears the glasses, very millennial looking?
Miss Silva.
Silva. So I saw her, I'm like, I just need to tell an adult, I'm leaving these out here, if you see any kids not doing anything, you have the right to yank it, you know, kind of thing really fast, just so someone just doesn't go, where did they come from? But Annalie asked me to leave them out, so I left them out without any guidance.
What
Yeah.
if Mr. Alex helped?
Well, Mr. Alex, he could help, but at that time when you guys have recess, that's when he has his break from his class.
Oh.
So,
I forgot Miss Rocky will only come like Sunday. Sometimes not. I don't know when Miss Rocky
no, I'm not exactly sure when she comes anymore. Well, Miss Rocky doesn't come anymore at all, does she? Doesn't she? Didn't she get a new job?
comes to my class sometimes. Wait, is that Pepsi?
Yes, it is. Is that a healthy choice or a not healthy choice?
Not a healthy
That is not a healthy choice, Ms. Sheena. You're right.
But the thing is, it does taste good, but it's not really that good.
Well, I kind of like it a lot. But that's okay. But you know what? I know when I drink too much Pepsi, my body doesn't feel very good after. Sometimes it might give me a stomach ache. Sometimes it makes me feel lump like eggs.
Usually when I drink sauce, I really get sometimes hyper. But that also helps me like sometimes I make Beyblade YouTube videos and I sometimes drink like some kind of soda and then I get hyper of it, and then I'm able to like launch faster.
Well, a lot of that's just kind of in your brain, but if you wanted to, sometimes people go, hey, I got something special. It doesn't matter if they're sugar or not. Sometimes they just go, I got something special, and it gives them the energy. That's my philosophy.
Hold on. Wait, is aftercare still here?
No, they're gone.
Usually sometimes I stay aftercare until 7.
No, they close at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, but sometimes
They close at 6
they
o'clock.
have meetings.
Usually not.
I've been there for a meeting and
Usually not.
it was about
They want to go
6.
home.
Yeah.
Very, very happy to want to go home.
Yeah, but before my mama didn't pick me up early, so I was like almost there for until like 7.
Where?
Remember aftercare?
No, after 7, no.
I was like, it was so close to becoming. Wait, what's this? What's this?
It's our dinner.
So, I thought, like, I have awesome dinners, but not dinners like these good. Like, Mega Pizza Place is a very good pizza area. That's why they named it Mega Pizza Place. And the thing is, I don't like tomato sauce in my pizza because it sometimes gets stuck in the stuff, right? And then I drink a lot of water. he says we're not to be responsible. All boiled and this is all boiled cheese. We're not to make that. Wait, where's the green team ambassador? I just said, where's the green team ambassador? You just came.
See?
That's like magic.
Like, wish come true. Oh, you can do that? Show me. Oh, good.
Oh, here we go, right? This right-handed is hard.
It's hard. Are you left-handed? Are you writing with left hand or with the
No,
right?
I write with my right hand, but good with cooking with my
That's
left
funny.
hand.
Because
We are
I'm
both-handed.
maybe you're both-handed. So how do you throw? With your right hand or with your left hand?
Usually it's random because sometimes I go with my right hand and sometimes my left hand.
I want to see.
I think
That's
I'm
good.
both.
Okay.
And I
Cookie, you want to help me sort it out? So just
Plastic on.
find the plastic and jelly. What's your name, buddy? What's your name? What's your name?
what? Nathan. I've been in green team for 3 years.
Oh yeah. Nathan, you wanna help play a game?
Where do we
You wanna
play?
help too?
I just removed my mask.
Ah, okay, yeah, but no matter. You can
You can still,
you know?
everybody is
I'm
part of the
still
green team in
in my
here.
Gersa shirt. So.
Don't
Don't mind me.
Just find the images where we have a plastic bag, where we see a plastic bag and a wire.
Oh, I found it.
Okay, great. This one. Okay. Thank you.
This is like a bag, plastic
The
bag.
bag or jellyfish. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, great. Like, not like this. Break.
No.
Reuse. Recycle.
Exactly.
No, don't.
You
Alright.
know what's so funny about this?
Huh?
We have cardboard.
Yeah.
And we're about to throw them away.
Yeah.
But I just noticed I love building blocks.
Starting my.
So I just built, instead, before in 2016, I built blocks for car that actually is able to have wheels and it's able to move a bit.
Yeah.
And there's like a little pet area,
Yeah.
and then there's like another area where there's a seatbelt.
Yeah.
And then my next one is a goat.
Nathan, this one I need, the number 8,
So I shouldn't put this one.
the left one. You can give this to me? Great, thanks, man. Okay.
What do we play?
7, 10,
No, are you just gonna upload this to that?
Oh, actually, Roberto did this already. So some of the images are already
Oh
in
yeah, because it's like 2018. Like
exactly.
I wasn't in this meeting because I don't know why. Probably I was at school
Mm.
and probably. But actually, I like the old logo of Green Tea. While like the new one, I like the old one. Like it had like trees.
Yeah.
Vika says the same thing. Vika says the same thing. Man.
That's funny because we used to have the same thing, right?
Look at my shoes.
Oh wow. Yeah, then are those new shoes?
Yeah, I just got them and this is my first time wearing them.
Oh, that's good.
Like, wait, who wants to play Lego?
What is that? Ah.
Hold on.
Oh no, the board members are there. Yeah, sorry, the board members.
Yeah, yeah.
Wait.
I'm going to
now there's another.
Or just maybe the board members from the program.
Just bring them in order when you see the numbers.
1, 6, 8, 7.
That's cool.
Like a number for me.
Okay.
It's super nice of her.
Is that here?
Two. No, that's the, I think, wait, Papa, is that the
Now that's 2 and 4, so that comes after 1.
2 and then it comes
3.
3.
3 is right there. Great. Now it's 4, now it's 5. Exactly. Now it's 5.
6.
No, that's a 9.
Okay, and then the 6 is Hebrew.
Oh, there's no 6?
There's 2 5s.
Wait a second.
There's 2 5s.
Okay. Then here, just give me the 5.
Should we just put them on top?
Yeah, there's actually, just make 2
There
piles.
should be 2
6,
sets.
So, hold on, wait a second, exactly.
9.
So that,
That says
here, I just give this to you, and you just, if you want to make the second pile, with that.
done.
Right, okay. If you can put it in order, that will be advantageous.
The highest number is 9.
Highest number is 9.
12?
Well, actually, I have more for you.
Oh, 12.
Then there's
Wow.
11,
We
then
also
there's
need.
10.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. Here,
I still
yeah.
need 7. I need 1.
1, 12, Coca, this is for
I
you.
need 7,
11
8.
is for you.
I need 7,
10
8,
is
and
for
9.
you. 9 is for you.
Wait.
8 is for you. 6 is for you.
11.
So do you have the complete set?
Yeah.
What about you, Coco?
Yes, we have 12.
Okay, great.
I've got up to 12.
There we go, guys. And go. And so that's one set. And that's
Not real.
Thanks for cleaning up. This bird,
Yeah.
do you remember the story?
Charlie. I do,
Right.
but hold on, is that Photoshop or real?
This one is real. Yeah, that's
How did you take a picture of it? Did you just take a picture of it and Charlie just see the
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's Charlie.
It's not that you are there with the camera like that. You know?
They have to like eat a lot of trash. And that's sad. Yeah, the
Yes.
last picture.
We all know the story, right?
Hold on, can I
It's
see
like,
the He's 1 year old.
no, he's even younger. He's a baby. He's a couple
He's
of
like
days
2
old.
days old. Here is where he's dead. Oh, wait, can I see?
Yeah.
All right. You remember this game?
Oh, yeah. Plastic bag or
So you want to say if it's a plastic bag or a jelly?
it's a plastic.
Are you sure?
Plastic bag. Like usually jellyfishes have like
Okay. All right, let's
and
see.
plastic bags. I mean jellyfish don't have like
Handle. So that you can grab the jellyfish like that.
they're like sticky jellyfish.
Some of them. Not every. Not every.
Not every.
So here, next one, Nathan.
That
Take a look.
is plastic
What about this one?
That's a plastic bag. I said plastic.
Are you really sure?
Yes.
You wanna?
Do you know why why it's important to see the difference between a plastic bag and a jellyfish?
I know the difference.
It's because sea turtles,
Jellyfish.
they love jellyfish.
And this is a plastic bag.
So what do you love to eat?
I like to eat. I actually like to eat pizza.
Pizza. So imagine you couldn't make the difference between pizza and a plastic bag. And you would eat a plastic bag instead because you think like, that's pizza. Wow. That would be
Yeah.
disgusting, right? And it would also be not healthy. So
And they'll
for
get stuck in your throat.
exactly, and that's why the sea turtles, they swim in the water and they
Animals are not smart what they eat.
Well, you know, if you were underwater
Bless you.
and you look at this, what do you think? Would you eat
But
it?
there's tomatoes. No, I don't like tomatoes.
What about this one?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a jellyfish.
Okay. What about this one?
No way. No. Jellyfish. No. Look at
See?
that.
Nathan would have eaten it. So, and that's the tough choice, you know. That's
But why
why.
does it have that?
I don't know.
The plastic bag.
Maybe it was a kite or
Yeah.
something like that.
Or maybe
Kites sometimes
probably
look like that.
someone's hunting it and he
Yeah.
wanted to wear it, but he's like, nope, wrong one, and then he just throw it into the sea.
Sometimes they don't even throw it into the sea.
just,
Sometimes the
throw
wind
it,
or,
yeah.
you know,
Sometimes
or.
they just put it like even into the recycling
That's
bin
it.
without like a bin.
Yeah, exactly. What about this one?
Okay, plastic bag.
You sure?
But maybe,
Yes.
look, it kind of looks like shorts. Papa, look at because this has, I think that has that, because the holder, like, that was in the water really much, so the holders.
Now you mean that?
Strip away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
But it
can be.
actually looks like a jellyfish. That
This
looks
one?
like shorts.
Okay, next one.
Jellyfish.
Okay, next
That's the
one.
same photo as the other.
It is, right?
Yeah, 6 and 11.
Oh, wait a second. What about this one?
Jellyfish.
What about this one?
Plastic bag.
Oh, you're pretty good. What about this one?
Jellyfish.
Are you sure?
No, it doesn't look jellyfish look like that.
So the good thing is that, you know, you are smart. And most of the time you can make the difference. But sometimes, you know, the turtles, sea turtles, when,
in the water.
If one would be in the water, I like.
especially when they're hungry, especially when they're hungry, they just
Like when
think
they're
like,
hungry,
I love this.
or when they're like really hungry and they don't notice what they're eating, they just want to eat really much, so they eat anything
They eat.
could find that looks like or not chance what
Who?
they're supposed
You
to
have a
eat.
pet?
I'm allergic sometimes.
Do you guys have a pet at home?
Oh, we used to
What kind of
like goldfish.
fish?
I used to have a.
Oh wow.
I used to have a pet dog in Canada, but still Canada, but it doesn't have, like, I was allergic to dogs back then,
Okay.
because my mom didn't know.
Ah, really?
Yeah,
And then you found out.
yeah, no, my mom found out.
Your mom found out.
Wait, I get it.
Clever mom.
I get it why you cover that. So we don't know what it is.
What? This here?
Cover, no, the cover here. Did someone cover that?
Ah, I don't know. That's not
It's
too
under
much.
construction.
What about this
World
one?
of work. Okay, it says it's under construction. The papers are under
I
construction.
think that's the
Plastic
we
bag.
yeah, I think we made it already. Hold on, it's not in
Look
water.
at it. They're taking it out of the. Oh, look.
See, that what happened.
Oh, that. And it still has. There's food in there, so it won't
Yeah.
get it, but then it eats the plastic bag.
And you know what that is?
Ew, it looks so
Yeah.
disgusting. That's a dead turtle.
It is.
That looks like this plastic venom. I don't. That looks so disgusting. That looks like venom from. That looks like something from the movie called Venom. It
Oh, I
looks
didn't know
like
that.
poo.
What kind of movie is that?
It's like Venom. It's like.
Fish, really fishy fish.
But the thing is that there's also something called like Spider-Man 3, and then there's like this black thing called Venom, and it comes out to people. It looks like
That was the movie we saw in Mexico. Isn't that the guy? No?
no,
Spider-Man?
that's
What was his name?
it looks like long poop.
Well, it is kind of, you know, when
But if I was being that person, I would not do it.
That's true.
I would usually have like cobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
But sometimes it gets really slippery.
Do you know it? Have you done it?
No,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It was in the bottom.
But imagine this, imagine if that would make the way through your body. If you have like 1 or 2 or 3 and it gets stuck in your body, then you definitely won't be.
Okay, wait, can we go? No, you
Some of
can't.
it you might, but
If it's like a
too
teeny
much,
thing, it's
Yeah.
like, is it hard to?
I think plastic stays like
In your
it
body.
will just stay.
You'll always have some. What about sugar? You have plastic. Oh yeah, sugar is all right.
Why do you have plastic particles in your body?
Because there's, I think it's called microplastic. Every plastic thing that comes into the sea, it gets like another thing in the sea, and then it becomes like really plastic pieces. And then when we water, there's always going to be plastic. And it goes in and in our
And we're still, because plastic is not very old, plastic is only 60 years only. It's when it has been invented.
Wait, since you did buddy, that means that's not true.
No, it means that, say, if something's old or not, for some people, 80 or 60 is old. For others, is what is old, is a tree. When would you say is a tree old? 10 years or 50 years or 100 years or 200 years? There are some trees, I don't know if there's trees still alive. 1,000 years? I don't know how
Probably
old
someone burned,
we
like,
can ask you.
I know
There's
how,
clever teachers.
I think I know how some buildings may be built. Like, they actually have to, like chop wood.
Yeah. What are the oldest trees alive? Does anyone know? No?
Maybe 600.
I don't know. Do we know that?
I could find out.
The redwoods?
My guess would be redwoods, but.
Yeah,
Let's find.
What's the
Do some
question?
research.
What's the question?
Research.
What are the oldest trees alive?
Sequoias.
How old are those
They
trees?
can be up to thousands of years old.
See, up to 1,000 years.
I know at least sequoias can get up to
Wow.
3,000.
And they're still alive, right?
They're saying the sequoias knew the ice age animals. There's some that are still alive that don't know, like
Thousands,
that might have
imagine.
seen a
Oh
wolf.
my god.
Imagine you could talk to this tree and the tree would like,
Very old.
Oh,
He doesn't have one that has.
the oldest tree is a pinion pine,
I just found it. It's a bristlecone.
bristlecone pine, and the oldest tree in the entire earth is in California.
Yeah.
It's
California's
off the
White
395.
no way!
Yeah, on Earth, it's off the 395. They actually know what tree it is, but they do not let the general public. You can take hikes in the bristlecone pine forest, but you don't know which tree is the oldest, so someone doesn't go and do something to it. Certain scientists know
so
which
it's
tree
a
it is,
hidden secret.
The
but
oldest
yeah, the
tree in the
bristlecone
world.
forest, it's off the 395.
And how old is that tree? Do we know?
Did we see how old
That
it
is
was?
worth going there, Coco. To see the oldest tree on earth.
It's like over by, you know where Mount Whitney is?
What's that?
Over by like Mount Whitney.
Okay.
So if you think about Mount Whitney, there's Lone Pine.
Yeah, sure.
There's
I've been
Lone
there.
Pine, there's Bristlecone Pine Forest. That's where the oldest tree on earth is.
Oh my gosh.
And it's it's in the Owens Valley.
Should have brought my flashlight.
Oh, this is exciting. We've been there so many times, Coco. We're close to Big Bear, on our way to Big Bear, actually. Or not Big Bear, it's further north, on, to Sequoia, Mammoth. Lone Pine is on the way. Yeah, maybe, we saw the oldest tree.
But we didn't realize it.
Huh?
We didn't realize
We didn't realize it, no. So the oldest tree is out, and so, because plastic's not that old, we don't know what it does. Yeah, good to see you.
Get right on it, okay? Shall we start? Yep. Got Frank here. Frank's here. Keith's here. At this point, we would like to reconvene to open session. There is nothing to report out after our closed session. That being said, I would like to move forward with the student spotlight from the green team. Dr. Jones, would you like to introduce us?
Well, I'm gonna hand things right over. Go ahead. Take us away. Green team.
Hello, so I'm Roberto. If you don't know me, together with Kirsten Mueller, we are the co-chairs this year of Green Team. This is our second year. We're following the irreplaceable Tara. And the Green Team, basically, we try to promote care for the environment, love of nature for the students within the school community in general. Not only the students, and we do that with. We organize different programs. You'll hear a little bit more about them. We host different events outside the school as well as inside. We go camping twice a year. We do bike walk roll days to school days. And here's a little introduction. Oops, let's see sound. Is it loud enough? So that cheer is actually from our second grade presentation. We usually start the year hosting a classroom presentation with every classroom at school. And Alex and Coco are going to tell you a little bit more about those presentations.
Okay.
You want to take it?
Okay, yeah, what we do the Green Team Education Days, as we call them, because we try to embed all different classrooms, like from really the youngest to the oldest, and that's a difficult task because you have to stretch out and you have to adjust the knowledge, and you have to. What we want to do is we want to, at a very early stage, already do the basis knowledge of the 3 R's. Coco, what are the 3 R's?
Reuse, reduce, recycle.
Exactly. Reuse, reduce,
Recycle.
Exactly. And so those are the 3 R's, and we play a game when we do that, right? Because for us, most important is that kids, they learn a lot about saving the environment in connection with bad news. And so we actually want to do the different. We want to connect it with the positivity. So to reconnect nature. Nature is nothing, you have to save because of all the bad news. It's just because it's fun. So every time we do something, an activity, it's a fun activity. We try to do it entertaining and with games. So what is the recycling game, Coco?
It's where there's a box of trash and there's just a recycling bin and a trash bin, and then you have to run and get a piece of the trash, and then you have to put it in the recycling or in the trash. If it's recyclable, put it in the recycling bin, and if it's trash, you put it in the trash bin.
So we have 2 teams, and the kids, they learn from the early, from the lower grades to the upper grades. First of all, we start with keep the campus clean, and then start the where does it end when it goes in the black bin? It ends on the landfill. What can you do about it to avoid the trash in general? So that's why reuse and reduce is important. And if you don't have any other chance to do recycling, so we have to know what is recyclable or not. And then we play this game. And why do you like that game, Coco?
Because it's fun. Because sometimes you don't know which to put it in, and then you put it in the wrong one, and then you're like, oh, dang it. gonna try it next time to put it in the right one that the environment is more safe.
And what if you don't know it and you stand at the bin? What do you do then sometimes?
You just put it in the one that like you think like, oh yeah, plastic you always can recycle.
Exactly. And but it's a team game, right?
Yeah.
So when you don't know
So
it,
when you don't know it, your friends and your teammates help you.
right, they'd say then, oh yeah, put it in the blue bin or the black bin. So it's a just great fun activity. We are very grateful to get this opportunity. The teachers allow us this one day with all the grades, and that's about that.
Alright, so actually, Coco is one of our student ambassadors. We have like 2 Green Team student ambassadors per classroom, and the idea is for the students to have like a leadership role, encourage their classmates to reduce, reuse, recycle. In the end also, like, the idea is that everybody should be part of the Green Team. So we want to encourage the ambassadors to get their friends to be part of it, no? And this is the student ambassadors also helping during Jogathon. Because one thing also is the Green Team has been traditionally been, parent volunteers. So this is, for example, Steve. I mean, we want the students to help recycle on campus, for example, recycle in the classroom. But in the end, it's always been like a parent volunteer taking the recycling bins to the curbside. And this year, in particular, we're trying to get the kids more involved, and they're actually having a blast.
Hello, Green Team fam. My name is Leo, and I just like to help the Green Team. Why? Because it's really fun. I like working together with my friends to do fun projects. And if I work together with my friends, it makes the everybody happy. That's what makes me happy. It's a big fun experience.
So we've started this year, the last couple of Fridays, making recycling bins also accessible at the lunch area. Like waste there's a ton of waste at school, and especially in lunch with the hot lunch. And actually, we've got Nathan here. Nathan, do you want to share anything about recycling at lunch? This is when we were last week. Nathan made a sign for everybody to help.
Recycle boxes, plastic, paper, and blue bins. Green Team. I forgot because my end's gonna come.
Well, there you wrote Green Team, and then on top you said Save the World.
Green Team saves the world.
And Nathan is one of the students that really, he's always trying to, he sees us and he's like very happy to help and participate. And he also encourages others to join, which is what we want. But so, another thing that we host, and we're gonna start one in February, we hope to do it every month, is Zero Waste Lunch Contest, in which basically student ambassadors or students that are designated in the classroom, they color a leaf on a poster for every lunch that's brought with no waste in it. The students that get hot lunch can participate if they bring a reusable water bottle. Now they tally this in classroom, and at the end, the classroom with the most, after a period of time, a month, 2 months, they get invited to the Green Team party. But the idea there is also that it's not only the students that want to participate, but it also makes the parents at home think and how to send less waste to school. Even if they just leave the wrapper at home, it's better management of waste, I think. And that's part of one thing, or one idea behind the Green Team, I think, which is not necessarily only the students, but also like the parent community, and think about certain things differently. Because even now we end up with a lot of waste. And we want to as well encourage students to come with ideas to deal with it. So here's a quick idea from Eileen, from one of our ambassadors from first grade, and then Rasmus, who's he's not a student ambassador, but he's part of the student council. He's going to join also with us the idea of how to reduce waste for lunch. add to that?
So, hello, and thank you for introducing me. As you all heard, I'm Rasmus, and I'm from the Student Council. So, my idea in the Student Council, why I wanted to do Student Council actually, is because we have lots of paper trays in hot lunch. So, every day we're using a lot of paper trays, but we could reduce all those paper trays just by using plastic trays. We would only have to buy it like every second year, new plastic trays.
Cool. Thank you, Rasmus. And now, with the Green Team, you also believe that we create a sense of community within the school, again, not only with the students, but with parents. So we host 2 camping trips a year. They're usually sold out. You know, again, we do walk to school days, bike walk, roll to school every first Wednesday of the month this year. And part of the idea is also, I mean, we participate in every school event. You know, if there's the fall fiesta or the spring fiesta. And not only hosting a booth, but slowly we want to also think of ways of hosting these events. So, and the Green Team is like also like a small idea. So this is, I think, one of the successes of the Green Team. A very small idea. This started with the cafes. The biggest seller when we had cafes was pizza. So pizza in the afternoon and ice cream. And a Costco pizza has 8 slices. We cut them in half. There's 16 slices. We serve them on paper plates. Then, to avoid the mad rush, we were wrapping them on paper. And then eventually we were actually putting the wrapped pizza on the paper plates with napkins. So then we started with pizza Green Team style, and all it took is some effort and a pair of scissors. So we started cutting the boxes that you cannot recycle and serving the pizza on cardboard trays. So there are 0 waste from paper plates, wrappers, and napkins. Now we don't have the cafes, but this year at the Friendship Dance, the Green Team had a recycling waste station, and the pizza boxes cannot be recycled. The cardboard is full of oil, but the garden committee needed cardboard for the garden. So we collected all the trays and reused them in the garden. So I think that's a great success in like the committees in school working together, having a small idea, and just completing the whole cycle. Another thing we were planning on doing with the GPA, but we couldn't get to do it because we didn't get to carve the pumpkins from the pumpkin patch that was planned in campus, but the GPA, the garden committee, and the Green Team, we were going to work together on using that for compost. Also, that's another, I think, one of the ways of thinking, not only with the students, but as well with the parent community and the events that happen on school. And then also we're exploring now new ideas, and Nolan has something to say about this, about food waste reduction and having access to food, to produce.
My mom works for Food Cycle LA, and every week she picks up food from stores, farmers markets, and bakeries, and she brings it to people in need. And my idea is that we could bring it to this school and onto campus, and we can make a place where people could come old people could come and pick up food from there, because we always get a lot of stuff, so it would be enough for many people to get food.
All right, thank you.
Just a side information, top one waste in US is not plastic, it's not paper, it's food. And that's the only country in the world, just letting you know. That's why it's a great idea. It's really good.
If I can add a couple of things. So this photo that you saw, like the one before, is just from last Saturday, a big grocery store just a couple of minutes from here. This is what they were what they were going to compost in one day. This is just a produce that they pulled off the shelves. In one day, this was going to be composted. I started going through it, and the next photo, I think 3 photos, shows you how much produce was saved. and actually donated to the UCLA students, which was 272 pounds. And this is just in one day in one store. And I'm only talking produce, I'm not even talking dairy department, meat department, and all other departments. So we are just having, like, as Food Tech LA, I secured that store, we're just having a toll-in right now, trying to get all the departments to work with us. But since the store is like closest to the school, my vision, my bigger vision, and this is a question of space, of course, we could literally, I could be dropping off here because we are non-profit, so as long as it's a non-profit, I could channel all the foods to our school if we figure out a distribution system, or even like a pantry style situation. As long as we have one room with like a donated fridge and a sink, it's doable, you know, and the entire community could be, like, all of us, you know, we could be benefited from it. So at this point, I have access to it, like, on a daily basis. I just don't know where to deliver on this campus. I'm delivering every day to other places, but I could be channeling it here if there's enough interest.
Now, to finish, basically, so part of the Green Team is we want to also engage some of the community through parents and parents with ideas. And to finish, I want to invite Suzanne to talk about one of the events that we have planned.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Avila, and I organize the beach cleanups for Goethe School. We have 3 beach cleanups per year. I organize them in cooperation with Heal the Bay. I contact Heal the Bay, put the dates on the calendar. I then get an official permit from Los Angeles County, the Beaches and Harbor Department. And we have the beach cleanups in Playa del Rey, all the way at the end of Calva Boulevard. It's called Toast Beach, and we invite all the families, all the students to join us. It's usually on a Saturday or a Sunday. And during the beach cleanups, we hand out data collection forms. I just show you this example real quick, where we actually note what kind of trash we are collecting, what kind of items we are collecting. And top 3 on the list, what we are collecting at the beaches are styrofoam, number 1, number 2, plastic, like bottle caps, empty water bottles, and number 3 is smoke-related items, cigar and cigarette butts. And I then report the data to Heal the Bay and show them our efforts and what we did. Actually, our next beach cleanup is coming up on February 8th. It's a Saturday, 10:30 till 12 noon. If you have time, we would like to invite you all and would hope to see you there.
It's super fun. It's super fun, and it's building community on the one hand, but it's also being part of science on the other hand, because we contribute with our data to a bigger picture. Like Heal the Bay is one of the organizations, and that goes into, like, all the data is collected, and then it's also brought back to companies, like the big companies, and now there's evidence, like, hey guys, your packaging is like found all over the coast. So, and that is evidence to do something against it. Not only us as consumers, but also the industry has to act. And that's why we are an active part, our kids and our community. And that's why it's a really important part.
And now to end. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Roberto, we appreciate you bringing the group together, and we invite everyone to, you're welcome to stay through the meeting, but I also realize many of you need to get going. So thank you so much for being here, parents supporting and bringing our students, and that was a great gift to us.
Thank you for having us.
So is the video on this going to be
All right, thank you, Green Team. That was very inspirational and educational. All right, at this time,
Let's go.
Public comment?
Quick photo.
Perfect, thank you Kathy, just the way I like it. Let us move on to consent items. Approval of the regular board meeting minutes of June 17th, our annual meeting.
I move.
All in favor? Aye. Approval of the regular board meeting minutes of December 9th.
Move as well.
All in favor? Alright. Okay, let's start with the finance committee report. Mr. Ryan is not feeling good. Let's get that out of the way.
Stay over there.
Stay over here. Want me to stand up? You here?
Yes, please. Yeah, if that's okay. You can bring a chair if you want to.
No.
He's on the bed.
Down the bed.
Hello, everyone. Tonight we'll be going over the financials as of December. So this presentation includes both November and December financials. Starting off.
What is it? For order?
Point of order.
Point of order. Point of order. I move for approval of the November, December financials. You gotta ask for a second.
Do I have a second? Perfect. Discussion. Thank you. No, that's all right.
So I'll begin with enrollment information. So what we have today is enrollment through month 4, and month 4 is very important because that is the end of period 1 attendance, and that's going to dictate our funding for the next portion of the school year. And our month 4 enrollment was 420 students. Our average daily attendance percentage was 97.1, and our average ABA for the period was 408.71. So the big picture is that our students that are enrolled are coming at a rate that's higher than budget by a little over 1%. And I think that's a point to celebrate. Any questions on attendance information? Before I open up that, though, I did want to point out that going forward for months 5 through 10 for the remainder of the year, we're still being conservative and assuming just a 96% for each of the remaining months. But we have been averaging 97.
Just go through your presentation
Okay.
and then we'll try.
Moving on the income statement side, our revenue variances remain the same, and they're all tied to our average daily attendance being, well, our total enrollment being lower than budget by about 14 students. There was only $1,000 change from the last board presentation to this one as far as total revenue goes.
And that's with 2 months worth of data.
Yeah, so from October to December, there's only been $1,000 swing, and it's actually $1,000 swing in the positive. On the expense side, the total expenses for the year, we continue to see, the same thing, the same overages that we've already, overages and savings that we've been discussing, and the change from the October presentation till now was $2,700, and it's $2,700 in the good. So there wasn't a lot of movement from our October financials to November to December. And to finalize with the balance sheet, we are forecasting the total cash at year end to be $867,000, which is $200,000 better than budget, and this is along what we've been planning on for the year. And to remind everyone, that had to do with more money at the end of last school year to start with this school year than we anticipated when we set the budget. That concludes the high-level discussion of the dashboard. The last pages of your package show the check registers for the months of November and December. The last 2 pages. They've been reviewed at the finance committee level, but the board should also take a look and let us know if anything stands out, if you have any questions.
Okay. All in favor to approve the financials for November and December? Aye. Okay. Thank you, Al. Brian? Brian. We are now going to move forward with the ED report.
Okay, and I think, Ryan, that means you're good to go. Oh, thank you for being here. Okay, if you can go ahead and open that one up. We need to start with a notification that we have had a resignation on our board from Margaret Hernandez. And Margaret, as you guys are aware, has had trouble getting here this year. Had been in for a phone meeting. I think it's only one meeting this year, but it was really a struggle for her to get here. And she did send a resignation letter designated or dated December 27th. And that means our current board does have 5 members, so 3 is a quorum. We would definitely like to thank Margaret Hernandez for her service to the Goethe community. She had many years on the board, and it was greatly appreciated for her commitment and support over the years, and we wish her well and give her our great thanks. You heard the enrollment update as of December. I wanted to give you, if you recall at the last meeting, we talked about a family of 4 that was moving out. That's a big hit with one family, and you'll see that reflected. We actually also had, even better, we also had I think we had 1 in and 1 out, but you can basically see that at 417 is where we stand currently as of the 23rd of January. So that there's typically in enrollment over the winter break is usually there's fluctuation, and so this reflects that that fluctuation. Any questions on enrollment? Really briefly, we're in a bit of a holding pattern on Prop 39. We have been working with the Prop 39 office trying to create an alt agreement for the current year. We are also in a waiting pattern on awaiting the proposed allocation for next year. So that will be coming in on February 1st. And we will be checking into what that is. As we've mentioned before on Prop 39, it's a whole new ballgame this year. We do not expect it to be business as usual. There's a different climate, different political climate that's out there with regard to charters and with regard to Prop 39 in particular. So obviously we're paying very close attention to it, but it's just a lot of uncertainty, and we're hoping that it will be a positive result that we see. I wanted to give just a quick update on communication strategy. We've mentioned external communications, and I talked about Fresh Schools. As the board is aware, we have been switching opening a new banking account, and we have closing off a banking account as well. While that is underway, we are holding off on Fresh Schools because that will tie in. It has the fundraising piece, and we didn't want to have that interfere in any way with fundraising for the gala. So we're going to look to launch after spring break. What Fresh Schools is a whole communication suite that ties our entire community together in terms of an email system, a system for fundraising, and we made a presentation on it previously. So just know that is coming, and what we hope to do, the reason why we want to launch it in the spring is we want to test out, work out the bugs so that we'll be hitting the ground running next year. So that's the idea of doing it in the spring. Also, there was asked for a clarification on the internal communication document that I shared, the one that looked like this. And it was Yasir who had asked with regard to the ED being kind of in the middle as the center point. He did, wanted clarification on where, what happens in the case of, if the EV's in the center and, as this here puts it so nicely, what if he gets hit by a bus? But I do want to give that clarification. We've been working as an administrative team in defining roles. For instance, our assistant principal has been a key role of being the middle school administrator this year. And so things have fallen under that. And we've tried to be sure that Casey's role as principal is centered on the go-to person with the teachers of the school and coordinating all the pieces of related to students. And in the same way with regard to board level activity and the support that I received from the Director of Operations. It would be the Director of Operations who would take the place of what I'm doing to make sure that we are still functioning until the time the board is able to get together and determine its next steps. But we are dividing these roles up that were in existence last year, and we are ready to move forward on anything with regards to communicating with all of those teams. So the Director of Operations will be a key person filling in that situation. I wanted to give an update on outreach. We are continuing on with our weekly tours, and now things start to ramp up as we head into lottery season. We've got an event that we have signed up for the first time, which, while it is a fundraiser, it's a 5K event that's held at LMU. It's called Rock, Roll, and Run. It takes place on March 14th. And for the first year, we are participating as a school. There are 18 schools that participate in this, and we'll be pushing things out for March 14th, but I wanted to give you an idea about that. The real reason we're doing it is not so much for the fundraising aspect of it, although that's always nice. It's really about outreach, and we want to have a visible presence in this run where schools are all there and they're all wearing their gear. We're going to have everybody wearing their house shirts, and we're going to make sure that we have a really good showing. It's not just students, it's also adults who participate in this, and so that's going to be, I think, a good event for us to be a part of the 18 schools in the area that surrounds LMU. This is put on by the LAX Coastal Chamber of Commerce, are the ones who organize it. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that in terms of outreach, I am planning to move us forward with social media and internet marketing through Niche Marketing, which is one of the kind of major players along with Great Schools who do rankings of schools across the state and the country. They're tied in with real estate marketing and all those kind of things as well. But the benefit of this is really taking advantage of folks who are in our local area and getting our name out there more to them through direct marketing and redirection of emails. When you pull up great charter schools, best charter schools in LA, the site that is immediately among the top, either one or two on a Google search, is Niche, and so this is going to allow us to track who's going into that. There's more than a million people using that in the LA area. We're going to be able to track who's clicking towards our profile, and then also who is then connecting with our school. So it's going to provide metrics to be able to track that. And I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's something I'm going to be driving this forward on. Any questions on outreach? No know, are moving pretty quickly today. So,
May I ask you, the Rock and Roll and Run event, you said it's a fundraiser, exactly how are fundraisers work?
There is an entry fee because it's a full 5K where, you know, with the bibs and timing and all of that, get the results and that type of thing. So there's an entry fee. Like for adults, the entry fee is $30, and then there's a credit card fee that goes along with it. We don't get the credit card fee, but we do get the entire entry fee kicked back to us. So, and the reason they're able to do that is they get their own sponsors that pretty much run the event. And so they in the past 2 years have been able to refund 100% of those entry fees. So if we get, you know, 50 kids, parents, or 100 kids, you know, that's some good funding that can come in. But again, I don't think we're not pushing it for the fundraising reason, although we're certainly not going to shy away from collecting the check on it.
May I just add that you may want to not just parents and students, but open it up to the teachers, you know, have contests for classes, you know what I mean? And really engage. I mean, I think the Jogathon is great, but this is also a great way for teachers and the admin to get involved and raise funds.
It's a great kind of tandem event with the Jogathon, which is the fall, and which is an on-site and local and completely school-related event. And this one is kind of it's a bigger scale, and so yes, I think we can see how many folks we can get.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm serious. Like, think about, you know, having a top leaderboard for teachers and admin. You know what I mean? And because
Pete and I were going to run for board.
I will win.
Pete and I will want to run
See,
for
it's
board.
starting already.
Exactly. But yeah, really think about that because I was part of the LAX Coastal Chamber of Commerce for a few years, and a lot of schools really go to town with this, and that's one of their major funding sources.
Can you explain to me the involvement with niche? So we're just being listed on there, or what is our plan?
So they would help us to develop our profile. It doesn't involve the ranking. The rankings are the rankings, and they have their own algorithm and how they figured that out. But they would help us create our profile and find keywords that people who are doing searches would be looking for, particularly our school. So IB, German language, I mean, lots of different things that people from anywhere in the world might be interested, who might be moving to LA. So that those kind of things would catch them. Also, geographically, we would want to capture those who are within driving distance of our school. And then it allows, so when they do searches, we can be a sponsor, a sponsored listing that comes out, so our name gets up there when lists are coming out of different schools, and it also allows us to be able to track and see what people are doing when they've gone through the website, which is, as I said, is one of two, the other one being grade schools, that is basically where everybody looks to do these kind of things. And so this is going to allow us to target folks who are potentially interested in our school, and then be able to remarket to them as they progress further through it. So they're going to guide us through that process as part of.
So somebody looked up elementary schools, zip code, we could come up, then they would collect the IP address from the looker-upper, from the researcher, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's through Google Analytics type of. Okay, wanted to give a quick update on fundraising. The big event is coming. That is the gala and the silent auction, March 21st. There's the invitations went out to families today, so that was a very exciting step. And now we are in the process of securing sponsors and are getting our collecting auction items. And so that is really at the heart. That is really at the heart of what our next steps are, and we have a lot of work to be done on that. But we're very excited to be heading into the final big event of the year with regard to fundraising. So I do want to give the update on fundraising. I want to give you a clear idea of where we're at this point in the year. And what I want to stress is at this point we are on target for our fundraising. We are, there's the major events that we've done. The annual giving campaign, which you can see at 181,000. So things keep trickling in. You've seen that number continue to rise. Things do come in. We have monthly donations that come in that are still a piece of that, so that will continue to rise. We have also the matching donations down at the bottom, which we have over 20,000 that have come in on matching donations. All of that is really a part of the annual giving campaign. So you put those two together, and we're right in the zone of where we're trying to get to at the 220,000, and we still expect those numbers to trickle upwards. Our jogathon, where we had a goal of 30,000, we actually achieved 45,000, so that was really positive to the good. We're tracking pretty good for this time of the year with our Eat for Goethe, Shop for Goethe. Our book fair, a smaller amount, but that's tracking for where we want to be at this time of the year. We have the second one in the spring is coming, and other fundraising. There's things that we collect that will continue. So the big empty hole there is the gala and silent auction, and we haven't raised anything for that yet, and as of today, because I know I bought my ticket today, so I know that there's one piece there. So we'll continue to use this format to inform the board, but any questions then about fundraising?
So comment from the finance committee. I think my notes are not a little bit inconclusive. I can't read them anymore. But I think we have pledged and received 344. We have an additional 73 pledged but not yet received.
So that is what that was about is a PayPal that hasn't shown up yet on it hasn't been put in yet. But keep in mind there was also a PayPal that went from June to July of last year, so we've got to balance that out as well. But it puts us in a spot. But most of that are in these numbers. We've included those numbers.
So I think we're up to 410. No.
Yeah. Go ahead, baby.
As Chris said, the numbers are already included. So most of the money that is in PayPal that needs to be transferred is what came in through the jogathon. So your jogathon number is already here with 45,000 because it was reported. It just hasn't been transferred to our bank account. So if you looked at Ryan's numbers on your financials, you would see that the numbers are lower because the money hasn't been transferred to the bank account, so that he doesn't have a record of it yet.
So
but
my
it's
big
reported
issue.
on this.
My big issue is I just want to see as a finance committee chair, and I understand the matter that we're not receiving everything which was pledged, and I understand what we have received is in our bank account. It's safe. That number is what we have received. I want to see in this report how much was pledged today.
Okay, I can tell you this. The pledge number for the pledge drive is the only event where you pledge something that you don't receive. And it was pledged 213,000. And you have 181,000.
So the number is not coming in. So we need to understand when we adhere to the budget. And I know there were some accounting issues where we double counted, for example, the matching donation, we had it embedded. But realistically in the budget is 500,000. We have another 20,000 here. And so, and in the grants, there's money coming in additional money which we then have to spend, I get this. But from a top line, there is more money than the 344. So what I've asked for this report is to add a number based on the numbers we have not just received but which were pledged, understanding that not necessarily that people back out and say we have financial troubles and we can't make the payment. I get all this. But I want to see a budget, like what could we have conceivably got for the budget and where we are. And this graph doesn't show it.
So I can add something additional that says these are monies we expect to come in, and so
Yes.
that would be the balance between the 181 and pledged,
Right.
and it's possible that they would come in. The purpose of this is to show what we actually have.
Yes.
But you want to also know what are the upsides, and then the other one is the second grant that we're
Right.
applying for. That money hasn't come in yet. We
Yeah.
have not been
But we
given it, but
haven't.
there's a good chance we're going to.
And what is that money to? So that's another. What is what's outstanding on the grant? What we're applying for? Another $60,000.
No, another it's 48,600.
So there's another $70,000 in there, which gets us between the grant and what we have received, which gets us up over 400. And we have a couple more events coming in. And so, I agree that we are. I think we should show the number in the budget, which is 500 is the line item. It says here, 500 is the grant fundraising item, is 500, not 520. And the way it looks right now, we are over 400 with one big event coming in. So we're getting very close to making the numbers. I'm very optimistic, but I think the graphic doesn't show it. All numbers are good. That's my only hold up on this.
And I thank Blaine for being conservative on
Yeah.
that.
No, I think it's with caution always, right? But we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then I'm going to give the final slide that I have, and we'll switch over to. Can you pull up the other slide? When I put it in this, it got wonky. So we did it separately. That's the one. So we'll let Casey talk to us a little bit about our student achievement.
So I first want to just say that normally we have this information for you at the board meeting immediately after we have administered the test. However, Galileo changed some things in their system and didn't let me know until after I was requesting to have this data. So then it took time for me to upload the new information that they wanted with this change of the system. So that's why we have this data for you now, because we didn't get it until December. So for our Galileo testing, that's the internal benchmarks that we do in English, language arts, and math for 1st through now 6th grade. We do them 3 times throughout the year, October, January, and March. So the data that I'll show you right now is from October, but at the February board meeting, we should have the January testing information that we're doing right now. So we'll have a lot more data to look at, and we'll be able to talk more about growth. This just gives us a snapshot of where our kids were in October when we first administered the test. Does it scroll down? This is a PDF.
Oh.
Yeah. So if you can scroll down to the next. Thank you, Keith. So for English language arts, this is broken apart by grade level. So we have 1st grade all the way through 6th. I included the numbers of students who were tested for each of these on the sides because we have sometimes 2, sometimes 3 classes at a grade level. And then also to note, 1st grade does their assessments in both language arts and math paper to pencil, while the rest of the classes do them online. So 2nd grade is the first time that our kids are getting assessed digitally for a larger assessment this way. So looking at the English language arts results, this is pretty in keeping and in line with what we would expect to see in October. The language arts assessment covers all standards that students would know from the whole school year. So we wouldn't expect that most of our kids are going to be in the 80 to 100 percentage here because it's October. So when we look back at previous years and how our students have started and the growth that they made, this is a similar starting point, which means we're on track for language arts to get that growth so that our kids will be performing in that 80 to 100% meeting and exceeding level that we want to see. And our 6th graders, another thing to look at too is like our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. They're doing really well, so after we've had them and they're doing these tests, we're seeing that they're having that growth and they're starting the year off stronger than they were in the primary grades. And if we go down to math, so math we see kind of similar numbers between the high 50s to the 70s. But the important thing to know about math is that we have switched in the last couple of years the concepts that are covered. So we actually, for math in October, students were tested only on concepts that either had been introduced or had been taught already. So we would want these numbers to be higher. We want to see more of those 80 to 100% ranges for all of our classes. With this data, it's aggregated for everyone all together, and it takes some time for the system to give us that, but what teachers have access to immediately, and I have at the end, I'll show you what that is, are individual student scores. And so when we have this first assessment, then teachers go back and can look at their students and say, okay, why did half of my class not meet expectations right now? What is it that I'm missing? So that they can go back and do whole class reteaching on those concepts, or look and see, hey, I have this group who's really, really strong, and they don't need to be a part of this. I can continue working with them.
So does it reflect also, can you then go back to the individual units 1 to 10, we are now at 10 and 4th grade. So you can see 8th grade, as maybe group 8, concept 8 wasn't properly received.
Yeah, so actually, could you scroll down to the very last one? I'll skip ahead. So this is just a tiny little section of what teachers can see. So these would be different students, and then this is just the first 2 standards, but it would have a list of every standard that was covered for math. And what it does for each student is say, for this standard, are they ready now? Meaning they're ready to master this, but they haven't yet, so we need to keep working on it. Or have they learned it already? Or are they going to be ready soon? So they're not quite ready to master it. You need to do some more reteaching, and you need to go back and make sure that they have those basics and foundational skills mastered first. So when they get this score report, and this they get as soon as the kids are done with the test, so they don't have to wait for any data to come.
So let's just say there's a systematic issue being discovered in the class.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need additional resources for tutoring and everything else? If need be, do we need to address it now? Or what are the takeaways from these classes? Do you need additional resources?
So what happens is exactly that. So teachers look at this, and we have done our first tutoring session after students were tested. So starting in end of October, November, we did our first after-school tutoring session. So teachers were using this data along with their classroom data to identify which students need extra targeted support and which students are we just going to go through and work with in the class. So we don't need additional support now. We did in October, and that's when we started those tutoring sessions up.
Well, going forward.
Yes.
As results
yes.
seem to be the same way, have the same trajectory throughout the year. Is there an intervention point where we as a school need to give you additional resources in order to get these numbers up in Galileo earlier on?
I don't think at this point that we need additional resources. It's just making sure that we're using the resources that we have in effective ways. So we have the math subcommittee for School Site Council who's looking at different math resources, and we got a bunch of input from our teachers. We sent out a survey to see what are you using from our current math program, what pieces do you wish there were that we don't have, what things aren't useful so they're not effective. And so that is information that we have to look and see, okay, here's this really great resource that no one is using with Envision, so let's get together and talk about doing that.
A follow-up question, I apologize.
Yeah.
Upper schools have division heads, or they have, there's a math chair and there's an English language chair. Do we need? We have an IB chair. Do we need for specialty?
I think you can always benefit from having a specialty
No,
person there.
No,
but I
but
would
a designation
say
to a certain teacher who is taken in addition to you, or like I don't know how we organize this. Is there any need we need to support financially?
I will say that always use some more funds to help get more resources, but I don't think that we need to designate extra funds at this point for anything. I think the subcommittee team that we have, which is made up of teachers from lower primary, upper elementary, and our 6th grade teacher, and then myself, Dr. Jones, and we have a couple parents who have some math experience as well, that we've got a good solid knowledge base there. And then also our returning teachers are doing a really nice job of helping support the new staff and understanding the curriculum and how to work with that. We're also on tomorrow's PD talking and meeting as a staff to look at where do our kids have to be at the end of the year to go successfully into the beginning of the year. Because looking at that entry-level data for math, we want to see that our kids are performing better. So if they're coming in and they're already struggling with concepts, then that means in the year before, we have to make sure that they're really strong in whatever the foundational skill was that would have helped to positively impact that. Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's exactly right. I guess, is it possible to match these kids' scores with their previous year scores to the extent that they were here last year?
Yes. Yeah, so that was, since we've had this data, several teachers have asked, hey, can I see what my kids from last year did this year on this test? The teachers don't have access to look through that. That's a report that I would have to go through and draw and pull from, but that's the next step, is to then look and see, okay, so we know the bigger trend of like as a grade level, this is what we're doing, but are our kids who ended really strongly last year, are they starting the year strongly, or is something happening, or are the kids who maybe were meeting, but then they've kind of dropped off? What has happened there?
How many items are in this assessment?
It's between 25 to 30, depending on the grade level.
How many of these standards do they report on?
It depends. So it depends on how many they've covered for math. For language arts, it's all of them. They do a
They do the same
mix
thing?
up. Yes, they have the same printout for language arts as well.
That would be all somewhat unreliable, but there's a lot of standards to the year, and if you have 1 or 2 questions per standard, that, you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other intermediate summary other than standard and?
So you can also run just their student score report, so you can see how they did on each question. So they can run out and look at the answers for those. You can see an overall percentage of how many they got right. There are a couple different ways to look at it. Most of the data though is standards based.
Right. So don't ever look at the questions. That's so you know. But you don't want to do that, because that's not a good way to approach it, because you want to focus on the standards. There's gonna be some people, or people on the board, you don't want to look at the questions because the questions are not going to be the same, right? They're a sample that assesses whether or not you meet a standard. And some people unfortunately think, oh, well, 4 plus 5, okay, so then we're going to make sure that we can do 4 plus 5 and 6 plus 3 and 7 plus 3. Those questions may not be anywhere near being on the assessment again. You want to make sure you're covering what the intent of the standard is, not the questions, which people fall into. I'm not saying you are, but
Yeah. And Galileo also has the opportunity for you to change the depth of knowledge for your questions. So you can have some that are a very basic, easy to understand and easy to find the answer to question, or you can take that same standard and have a much more complex question for students to have to comprehend and figure out the answer
so what
to.
did we
So
pick?
we do a mix of those. So there are some that are on the easier for a standard, and then we do some more challenging level ones for the standards.
Where
so
does the
you get a
state
mix of
test
those.
rank into complexity when we asked our question and giving it there? Because Gwyneth's mantra was the Galileo test assessment predicts the outcome of the state test, and the state test is important for us because it goes in all kinds of other systems, charter renewal, just how.
So the way Galileo is put together is to mimic what we would expect to see on the CASP test.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one assessment that teachers submitted, and then I got a response back from Galileo saying, hey, I noticed with looking at this that you had a lot more questions that were really a lower level of complexity for this one standard than you do for the others. So go back through, and if you want to leave it, that's fine, but if you don't, change it and I'll fix it for you. So they're really good too about if something gets sent in and it's not in line with what we have asked for or what they know that we're expecting, because we're using this to help us with our understanding of how we're going to perform on the CASP, then they'll send that back and say, hey, we noticed this, do you want to fix this, or was this intentional?
So the teachers are selecting items and like an item bank?
No. So for math, what they're doing is selecting the standards. So they'll give us the list of standards, and then teachers will go through and say, we've covered all of these, we haven't touched these ones yet. Or we've, like for some of them, we've just introduced this, so let's put a few questions on, but this one they really should know, so let's get some more to see if they really have mastered that, or if we need to go back and reteach that. But they're not selecting the questions themselves.
Good question. It took pretty long to get those results. I assume that wasn't the regular
No.
or the standard.
Yeah.
So we just did the
We're
second.
currently doing it right now.
doing it.
Yeah.
So could we expect for the February board meeting the
Yeah.
next results, so that basically there can be a very quick follow-up to see where we stand now in January, because October is pretty far back, so.
Yeah, so by the February, it only takes a day or so for them to get the data back to me. The hiccup was they had changed the way that they go through and start doing that aggregation for you, and you had to upload extra things that previously I would just email a notification for and say, hey, we're ready, and they would do it. So I had to go back through and apply for this whole new thing.
But the teachers we got to see the information right away.
Yeah, teachers had access right away, but these larger groups of like how we did grade level wise, class wise, took the time to get together with us. So by February we should have January's. I'll really quickly, if you want to scroll up, just because we kind of brushed past that, to show you our student groups. So this is just these are grade levels, it's just a comparison of our language arts and math, but this shows what we've already discussed is that our students performed better on the language arts than they did on the math, even though we would expect that those math percentages would be much higher with the way that we're testing them this year. So the next one is our student groups. So over here, these are the number of students who were tested in each student group. Our largest is our white student population, and then the smallest is our Asian student population. And then so you can see that our white student group performs the best out of both tests, and then closely followed by 2 or more ethnicities for ELA, and then our Asian student group. And this is pretty consistent with previous years and how our student groups have done. So what we really want to do is look at those lower performing groups and figure out what resources do we need to give them, what is happening in the classroom, and what can you change within the classroom so that they have better access to that information. A lot of it too to keep in mind is just when you have a smaller group size, obviously 1 or 2 students not performing as well has a greater impact than if it's like 10 or 20 students in a larger group. Yeah.
Well, and obviously the big issue for students at risk is going to be summer learning loss, which is what we're capturing a lot of here, which is why particularly looking at last year's assessment and this year's assessment, the subgroups is so important. And then thinking about potential interventions that happen during the summer,
Yeah.
which is a little bit beyond our control, but things might be recommended.
So just so I'm clear, February we're going to see the January results, is that correct?
Yeah, and I'll show you the change from October to January.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Casey.
Wait, and
sorry.
one tiny comment.
Yes.
When you have all the charts, when its percentages have the vertical axis go from 0 to 1, so that it's easy to compare across the charts.
I thought I did the previous one not.
This one, see, that goes back to 1.
Oh, it should. That was just an editing mistake. I try to always have them be 0 to 1 so that it's easier to compare. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that.
All right, thank you, Chris. As we mentioned, we've moved up the school accountability report card. So Chris, pull it up.
So, School Accountability Report Card is a document required by the California Department of Education and has been around for 20 years or so. It is a requirement that once a year we put together information from a variety of different places. It's actually, a lot of this is redundant, quite frankly, with other reports that we have to do, particularly with LCAP, which is newer. But this is still under law and a requirement, and so it focuses on things like Williams Act, Williams Law compliance, and how we do with regard to credentialing, and how we do with regard to facilities, and all different pieces. So this was in your folder for your review. We do need to have it up on our website. It's required to approval in January, so it's up by February 1st. So we will to make that requirement. And if there are any questions about the SART, let me know. But this is something we approve each year, and prepare this as a part of it. And I'd like to thank Casey for the work that she did on this one.
All right, is there a motion to approve the school calendar report card? All right, second? All in favor? Aye.
Who was the second?
Frank was the first, I think.
No.
Pete was the second. Or vice versa.
No, Pete was first.
Pete was first and
I
Frank was
second.
second.
Pete and I raised our hands.
I was simultaneous second.
So Pete moved and Frank second.
Yes.
All right, so now we'll move on to the
We did vote.
Oh, I thought we did. All in favor?
Yeah.
All in
Aye,
favor.
yeah. So we are ready to move on to the final item.
And this will be our last item of the evening. We thank our guest. We have one of two guests. So Guillermo, you are here.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Guillermo, Guillermo Garcia with Stifel. Apologies that my colleague John Kim was not able to make it. He has a 2-month-old who had a little bit of an emergency and had to go see the doctor this evening. So we have a presentation that we sent over. We also have hard copies.
Conference will begin when the next party joins.
Okay, we're set.
So just to give a little background on this, given the uncertainties of Prop 39, we want to be sure that we understand what our options are with regard to facilities. And this is going to be about a 30 to 45 minute opportunity for us to look into what are the situations of real estate in general, how it affects charter schools in particular, and then in more particular what it's going to fit into this. This will be, I hope, a informative workshop as well as a chance to have a real reality check of what we need to do to move forward and what the long-term plans might be. And joining us, I think, are
We have Alexis Schultz, who is president of GPA. So I've got for you, so you can go through that. She will probably join in a few minutes, but
okay,
we can start.
So what we put together here is a relatively comprehensive presentation, and I think we will go quickly through some parts and I think focus more on others. The first few slides, I just want to give you generally a brief description of who we are. So again, the name of our firm is called Stifel. We are a financial services firm, and John and myself focus on charter school facilities financing, primarily here in Los Angeles and California, but also throughout the country. These are some of your peers, primarily in California here, that we've worked with in the last few years, bringing them financing for their permanent facilities, which is one of the options that you might go down in terms of your facilities development. Here, real quick summary of our team. So my colleague John heads the group, and I work with him here in Los Angeles, and a couple other of our colleagues as well. So, didn't want to spend too much time on that, but just wanted to give you some context for who we are and what we do. The facilities financing, bless you, that we bring to market are tax-exempt bonds that are primarily purchased by mutual fund companies, so the likes of Vanguard, BlackRock, Oppenheimer, big names that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. They have a portion of the funds that they have to invest. They invest in charter schools. And so we have relationships with those funds and bring numerous charter school facilities to market each year. So let's talk about Goethe and Los Angeles and the complex maze that is real estate. Unfortunately, as you guys know, the charter school movement has been successful, which is great, but in terms of trying to allocate limited resources such as real estate, it makes competition quite a bit more fierce than it would have been otherwise. So if we were back in 2007 trying to find a site for Goethe to have a long-term facility, you would be competing with a whole lot less, roughly about a third of the charter schools that are currently in Los Angeles County. So there are a variety of different questions that we believe are key to keep in mind when a charter school starts down this endeavor of looking at facilities needs. So, starting from the top, would a district or private facility best meet our school's needs? Goethe has been around for 10 years, been successful here in Prop 39 space, but as Chris was noting, the environment is changing, and having some sort of certainty and some sort of some level of self-control or your destiny is something a lot of people value in this space. Location is very important. Obviously, you guys are here on the west side. Tends to be a more costly real estate market than other parts of Los Angeles. What grades? Up to now, you've been just elementary school grades. How big? Size is a big part of your ability to afford. There are economies of scale. The bigger you get, it's easier to finance greater projects and be able to provide more services than at smaller scale. So here are some of the subparts that go into this, and we'll get to more of these in detail shortly. So this graphic here on slide 12, we see as the typical journey that charter schools take from inception, the first couple of years, and what they do. They're typically going to be in some sort of short-term facility, whether that's Prop 39, whether that's a private lease, or facility use agreements. That is what's typical for schools in their first few years. Definitely in the first 2-3 years, perhaps 5, or even in situations like yours, up to 10 years. And then at some point, it is typical for charter schools to try to find more permanent facilities, and that can come into a lot of different manifestations. So on one end of the spectrum is you buy land, you build something new, you own it, you pay for it. On the other side of the spectrum is somebody does all that for you and leases the building to you. It could be for a long-term, potentially 30 or more years. You still have certainty over where you're going to be. You have stability, knowing that you're not going to get moved around the danger that you have with Prop 39 or other short-term leases, but still something that you don't own. And there are different varieties of that different flavors of that in the middle. You know, perhaps buying an existing building that's all ready to go, buying a facility that exists but you need substantial tenant improvements. In many cases, we've worked with schools who have, instead of buying the land outright, have secured long-term ground leases, often from school districts, but also often from religious institutions. These days, religious institutions, whether they're Christian, Jewish, or other, have a fair amount of real estate assets that they're not using as efficiently as they had intended to, or as they had in the past. We've been able, clients of ours have been able to get long-term leases for many of these organizations, and then on those ground leases, they then construct facilities that they will finance through bonds or through other means. So a lot of different possibilities that would all get you to greater certainty and stability than being in a Prop 39 situation. Here on slide 13, we highlight what we think are the three basic options that you have. There's different permutations of all of these, but these we think are the three primary options to consider. One is to continue leasing existing school space, whether it's Prop 39 or perhaps a private lease. You know, if you're able to stay in this facility, that's easy in terms of not moving, not having disruption. It is cheap comparatively, being in Prop 39 space, but it does constrain you in terms of you know, the space that you have, the ability to grow, flexibility. Whether the neighborhood that you're serving here is still providing the demand for the school that you'd like to have in the future. So that's option number one. Two is...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you speak up? Because we have a few people trying to listen, and so our camera and my laptop is trying to project your voice. So.
Sure. Maybe, why don't I...
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Much better.
So the second option here that we list is having a long-term lease of an existing school site and adding new construction. So this is sort of a hybrid option where you would find an existing school site that often a parochial school that's not being used or something of the like, and repurposing that school to fit your needs, often with a significant amount of tenant improvements, either to add additional space or to create the particular spaces that you need for your program. Then option three would be to either acquire land or get a long-term lease for a new greenfield site, and then do whole new greenfield construction from the ground up, creating a purpose-built facility exactly for Goethe that takes into account all of the needs and wants that you have for your program. So looking at 2 and 3, pros of the third option are the most control over the space, being able to build it exactly the way you want and accommodate the level of growth that you would like to have in the future. It is probably the most difficult in terms of finding new sites. It's likely going to be the most expensive, because if you're building from scratch right now, a purpose-built facility, it's going to be, the costs typically are higher than if you were able to find an existing site. Perhaps it's 20, 30 years old, but still can suit your needs. Any questions at this point? So going on to this next section, I want to talk a little bit about different approaches to thinking about this problem. Again, we have a spectrum. On one side, we have a developer-led facilities project, and that is a case where you hire upfront what's called a turnkey developer, who is someone who's going to go out, find you the land, design the school for you, finance it for you, build it for you, and then lease it to you. Now, there are several companies throughout the country who do this, a few that focus in California, and if you choose to go with them, they will do everything for you. You will have a ton of input into where the facility is and what it looks like and all the design and everything, but in terms of your upfront cost, money out of pocket. They're putting it all out of pocket. They are taking risks with entitlements. They are coming up with the financing. They are coordinating the development. And basically, you say you want it open, let's say 2 August from now. You sign a contract with them. They're supposed to deliver that school for you. Often the last couple months, everything is coming very hard to get it done right before the school opening. That is often a stressful time for them. And then you enter into a long-term lease with them, typically 30 years. They almost always have a buyout option, usually after about 3 years, somewhere on the order of 3 to 5 years. Their lease payments will often be escalating, so that it'll be low in the beginning, and they'll ramp up fairly quickly. And part of that, there's a couple of reasons for that. First, they do want to be sensitive to your enrollment patterns, particularly if you have a lot of growth that you're planning on. So they're happy to have lower payments up front. They also, frankly, they don't want to own this asset for 30 years. Even if you're getting into a lease for 30 years with them, that's not really their business model. They want to build the school for you, lease it for a few years, and then sell it to you. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end is a school-led financing, where someone on your team is taking the lead in finding the space, talking to real estate brokers, hiring the architect, funding all the pre-development costs. So most sites that you'll find in Los Angeles, you don't have the right to build a school there without getting what's called a conditional use permit. So there are sites that are called by right development. They tend to be in commercial areas, and if you can find one of those, there's a ton of value there, not having to do the CUP. The CUP typically takes 9 to 12 months. It costs several $100,000. It will be a lot of headaches, but it's something that usually goes with developing a school in California, particularly in Los Angeles.
We did go down that route and let's see that.
Yep, there are no guarantees, is the unfortunate part. So one benefit of doing the developer-led financing is that they are putting up that money, they are taking that risk. Consequently, it's going to be the most expensive because they're not going to take that risk for nothing. They're going to demand some higher level of profit for taking that risk. And so it depends on your
magnitude of what? On the magnitude of what? Like what's the internal rate of return on one or the other?
For a developer-led turnkey financing like school like that, it'll be like in the mid double digits, so like kind of 15%, something in that ballpark. They it's a successful project for them, and if your risk profile matches with what they offer, it can be a win-win, but it's not cheap. And so, in the middle, you can find hybrid approaches to this. So, like in an example that we did for city charter schools here in West Adams, they started going down the route of a totally turnkey project with a developer who fronted a lot of the development costs, but ultimately we ended up financing a project for them right before construction. So the developer did find the site, get it permitted, they got the CUP, got it permitted, and put all that money up front. But then at that point, we financed the purchase of the site and the construction contract from them, and they continued to manage the construction project from there on out. But at that point, the school already owned everything. So the developer took a fair amount of risk on the front part, but then the school took over, and it ended up being less costly than if the developer had done everything, and they would have been in the lease for 3 years paying lease payments, but more expensive than if they had done it all themselves. However, if they had tried to do it all themselves, there's no guarantee that they would have been successful. So that was a good example of kind of finding the happy medium there between risk and cost. A lot of people get involved in these projects, irrespective of what branch you end up going down. You as board members are going to be integral to all the decision making. Your executive team, led by Chris, is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting in the day-to-day. You know, even if it's a developer-led project, Chris is going to be talking to the developers all the time. They're going to be on speed dial. You're going to be talking to very frequently, especially up front when you're in the planning stages, trying to figure out where the site's going to be. There's still a lot of interaction with the executive team. Contracted parties, both XED as your back office is going to be involved, looking, creating financial projections, looking at different scenarios. If you're going to build something new, and if you've got the enrollment capacity within your charter, you look at different enrollment ramp-ups, different final enrollments to see how much you can afford to pay. So a combination of XED putting those projections together, combined with us running bond financing scenarios, together we can look at like a matrix of different options, how much you can afford under different scenarios. And similarly, whoever serves as your general counsel, outside law firm, is going to be heavily involved in all aspects of this, especially when you get into the real estate part. And on that one, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have your attorneys involved from the get-go, making sure that all the contracts that you're signing are the risk is being allocated properly, that you've got all your bases covered, because we have unfortunately had examples of clients who didn't have the right representation, ended up buying a piece of property that, while it looked like a deal at the time, developing it has ended up being substantially more costly than it would have been otherwise if they'd had the right people there looking at the contract to begin with. Things could have been a lot different. So I can't underestimate that. And just by what I've seen here earlier today in your board meeting, seeing the community engagement that you have with the parents here and the kids participating here in the board meeting, getting input from your families and organizations here is very critical, particularly if you're thinking about changing locations, because that makes a huge impact, obviously, on your families. External resources, there's a lot of folks you'll be talking to, particularly on the development side. If you don't hire a turnkey developer, you'll probably still have some sort of development consultant who will help organize things for you. Your real estate broker is going to be a big part. It's very key to find a broker who has done schools before, because if you get someone who's just a generalist, they don't understand what kind of space you need, the different constraints, particularly if you need a CUP or not. Folks who have placed schools in facilities before, that you definitely want a resume of the schools that they've worked with before. Preferably charter schools, but if not charter schools, at least independent schools or some other educational use. Architects, land use consultants, these are all folks who will get involved in the design process. If you do have to do a CUP, a political consultant may be helpful.
Absolutely necessary. So these soft costs are as part of these are sunk costs at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
About 15 to 20% of the project value. What do you think? You're the spreadsheet guy here.
Usually not quite that high, but they can be made, probably in the 10 to 15% range. Again, if you have to do a CUP, it could be on the higher side.
Have you any experience in this area of on the west side with developing the financing side?
In terms of the development projects on the west side, the closest that we would have worked on would have been city charter schools in West Adams, so not all the way out here.
Right. So I think the number is probably a little bit higher because of the CUP issue. There's nothing within the 5 mile radius. I think there's nothing within the 5 mile radius, which is an occupancy certificate. You have to go through a CUP process, likely, and then with land consultant. political and control than actually, you know, somebody finding the facility and holding it for that period of time.
Yeah.
Because the time actually goes against you.
Mm-hmm. No, all very good points.
Yeah. It's a timing issue more than anything else. Because the city trying to hold on to all manufacturing.
So their willingness to
They're
grant the
willing-
CUP is,
It's the willingness to grant, and the main problem is like what's not on here, the land use consultant, there's a subset of it, which is the traffic consultant, because everything around here is around traffic.
yeah, that's the biggest issue that comes with any CUP is ultimately traffic.
Traffic, yeah. Traffic and pollution.
Another critical part of this process is figuring out how much you can afford. And there's a lot of different variables that go into that. There's the revenue side and there's the cost side. And so on the revenue side, it's important to look at your net revenue, so your gross revenues less your expenses, and adding to that expected revenue to be generated from the SB 740 state reimbursement program.
I think we have, isn't it tied into titles? SB 740? Title 1 and Title 2 and others, other things.
So
no.
Not SB 740?
No, they're separate thing. No, SB 740 is something we would be qualified for. You think about like Title 1 where we're not, we don't qualify.
Because we don't have.
There
We would
are-
be able to qualify under the conditions.
So you bring up a good point. For SB 740, either the school population has to exceed 55% free and reduced lunch, or you have to be cited in a location where the closest elementary school has at least 55.
I don't think
and
any
have
of this,
preference.
I don't think anything of this, we looked at it and I think it didn't qualify.
So we wouldn't qualify for our school.
Right.
We would qualify for schools surrounding, and what that means is we would have to provide a lottery preference
Right.
for that school, which is something we could fund, because
Why-
without those funds,
Right.
it doesn't become, I would
So-
say, we
so-
don't have much better.
So I think what's important here is, I think these numbers, the cost for students, right, what we didn't have was, when we failed, were good numbers to back into, right, just, here's the site, this is what the real estate value is, right? This is what you have to pay for, let's say, to house 750 students. Times the square footage, times available building, times, if you were to purchase or lease it or want to lease it. And then do the math on the back end math. If these ratios meet, right, not more than 20%, not more than, you have to take the 2,000 for ADA, right, and how they just back engineer it and literally say, this is what you need to have as a capital buffer in order to go through the process, because that's what it ultimately requires, is to have a buffer available for you to go through a 3 to 5 year process to move into something like that.
So there's a scenario worksheet that they'll show towards the end of this. But just to go back to your question, we would qualify for the SB 740, and that is a critical portion of our charter school and other charter schools.
Frankly, almost all of them.
And all of them,
Yeah.
right, exactly,
Yeah.
So is that 1187 before that you would deduct it from the $2,000 cost per student? Because the revenue would increase because of that for a certain period of time?
1187 is the max per ADA funding that you would get.
Right.
So if your total cost per student was $2,000, then the net cost to you would be, the 813.
Right.
And so it's always important to look at it, both the gross cost before the SB 740 and the net cost afterwards.
Right. Do you have a spreadsheet? I mean, this is your proprietary financing spreadsheet. Do you have a spreadsheet where you can estimate the cost back?
Here actually we did put together this spreadsheet that looks at this one particular scenario here. This was developed in consultation with Chris, looking at your
There it is. That's what I wanted to see.
Should I actually go to the Excel?
No, just leave it there. That's good. Let's talk about it.
Oh, that's right. You have the Excel as well, right?
Okay, good.
We'll walk through this one, and then
Yeah, that's the
perhaps
critical
Uzier
spreadsheet, right?
could put it up, the actual working version. So here in this example, we look at what your current net income is. So for 18-19, net income was about $182,000. And then on this side over here, we look at how much net revenue you could have in the future based on SB 740, as well as adding back how much money you spend on Prop 39 right now, because you wouldn't be spending that anymore. That would be going to the facility. And then adding that with your net income. Now, there's a couple of very big assumptions here. One of them in particular is enrollment. And right now, this is looking at an enrollment of 930 students, which is over double what you are right now. So that's a huge change. So in this particular scenario, here, like some of the variables that we plugged in here is financing amount, the term of the financing. So the longer you can borrow, the smaller your annual payments are. The interest rate, which we put in at 5%, which is a little bit conservative in today's market, but for planning purposes, it's probably a good number. And then what we want to get to is a comparison of how much your net revenues are versus how much your payment is. And you want to have a buffer of at least 10%. So you want that ratio to be at least 110% of your available revenue over your annual payment. So based on this $18 million amount, annual payments are about $1.1 million, and that ratio that I just referred to is called coverage or debt service coverage, and that here we worked it out so this is exactly 110%. So in this scenario, with enrollment of 930, again substantially higher than you have right now, the financing amount, you'd be able to finance about $18 million in total. Now, $18 million is not the net that you would get, but that's the gross. Out of the 18, you have to subtract an annual debt service reserve fund. So you have to put aside a rainy day fund that's equal to your maximum annual payment. That's roughly about 8 to 10% based on a 35-year term. There are financing fees, and that money comes back to you, and any interest earned on it you keep, but it does have to be set aside. There's also financing costs for attorneys and the like. And then we've also budgeted in some amount of capitalized interest or prepaid interest that you would borrow for, and that would help defray your interest costs in the first few years as you ramp up the enrollment. So based on that, we calculated roughly about 78% of that $18 million would be net and project amount. If you didn't fund as much prepaid interest, that would be higher, maybe 80, 83% like that. Perhaps as high as 85 if you didn't have any capitalized interest at all. But considering the enrollment growth that you would need to go through, 78 seemed like a reasonable number. Now, on the right-hand side, we looked at cost. So, assuming an enrollment of 930, approximately 50 square feet per student, looking at a facility of about 46,000 square feet. And then here, this is a big assumption as well, cost per square foot. Here, for the LA market, $425 is a reasonable estimate.
Here, the new build?
Or
is that these other improvement?
It's meant to be an average. I guess if you want to new build, you could do something higher. But roughly $20 million of building cost. Land cost here, we're estimating about $4 million for an acre. So we get to a total project cost of a little under $24 million, which leaves a gap here of almost $10 million. And that's already at a relatively high enrollment. So there's a lot of different things we could play with. If if Uzier wants to pull up the spreadsheet, we can change some of these items in terms of land cost. you know, perhaps if you got into a long-term lease, you wouldn't have the $4 million up front, but you would have a ground lease payment every year. Maybe that's $200,000 per year, escalating 2 to 3% per year. So that'll add up over time, but it won't be the upfront cost like that. But at the end of the day, you know, the high real estate and construction costs that make some of these projects hard to pencil out. But what is absolutely critical, as we were just talking about, is the SB 740 funding. Without that, yeah.
So may I ask some questions? Why did you use the 930 enrollment? Because ultimately that's a program that's going from K through 12, right? Like, what's the basis for that? And as far as, and that would be the basis for the 50 per square foot, and as the cost per square foot, 425, I believe, is the retail for West Side, not necessarily LA. Like that's kind of high for LA County. So my first question is why 930? Why is that the? Are you talking about building a space for the next 30 years? Is that this document?
That was this sample.
Okay.
But that's one of the reasons why we provided the Excel, is to have the ability to do different iterations of it.
Okay.
So you have to think so the maximum enrollment, right, for a single site school would be 24 times 4 per grade. It's 100 times 12. In the kindergarten, so all in one building, you know, that's 1,200. We looked at McConnell, so 1,200, and McConnell had about that 68,000 square feet. So it's in that area, right?
And how much was that being offered for?
No, we just tried to lease it and convert it. And it's still empty. So it's a family, you know, they're holding it for their heirs. But again, you know, the neighborhood of manufacturing said they just said no more schools in that area for Silicon Beach. City council wasn't open to conversion. So, you know, I think if you go with the maximum enrollment, you know, for the school, which you would consider when you have all the grades, we only have operation, we only have a charter until 8th grade. So 930 is probably a realistic number, maximum enrollment, but it's probably lower than that.
So 930 for a K through 8. Is that right?
Yeah,
But our charter material revision says it's 700. Isn't it 700 something?
Maximum 750, and yeah, I went through. This is a higher number than I'd actually suggested originally.
Right.
I recall the conversation.
So have you ever worked, you know, with LAUSD on a, you know, I know in Birmingham High School in the Valley, they built a building on a, you know, on an LAUSD site. There was some space that I think they converted parking space in there.
They did.
They did, right?
Yeah.
They did.
There's 4 other schools on that campus.
On that campus, it's an underutilized campus, and there's a ground lease probably for the time, and then they built a beautiful building on it. The beautiful things about this, you don't have to go for the CUP, it's just already grandfathered in.
Right.
So I think that would be, I think, the most valid option. Have you ever done anything with the city? LAUSD and those kind of?
We have done those projects not with LAUSD. We have done some up north with San Jose Unified, where the district provided the space, again, a space that it didn't need, and the school entered into a 35-year ground lease, on which this was a relatively low-cost project in which they put portables down.
Right.
So that was very cost efficient. You know, not the prettiest school, but it got the job done. But if there was a way to secure a long-term ground lease with LAUSD on some of the property that they own, you would want to make sure that it's at least 35, 40 years. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems trying to finance something shorter than that.
Right, and so how would you, because our charter, our charter only goes to 5 years, maybe they do 8, right? I don't know what it is, 5 years. How do you bridge this between the ground lease and the charter renewal? Because they can revoke your operation every time, right? Every 5 year, every renewal, they said, well, you did something wrong, you're done.
In terms of financing, the folks who invest in charter school facilities, they understand that risk, and so
They price it in the interest rate.
yeah,
Okay.
and they understand that if you're doing what you're supposed to do, if you're getting good scores, you're doing better than your competing schools, you're providing a different curriculum that the district doesn't provide, which is perfect for you guys in having the German immersion. You know, if you're doing those things that suggest that you are a viable school that is successful and parents gonna keep wanting to send in their kids to your school, then charter school investors can get comfortable with that.
Right.
So I think that's the message, is that we have a good program. We are just locked into this battle now with LAUSD, and I mean that's the whole conversation.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, I also think if you have to capital fundraise this, I'm always like, it's like a catch-22, right? You need to start somewhere, and and so I mean, look at the school. If you were to bring in some funds, outside funds, and would co-share this, underutilized campus, it's right here. I mean, there's enough space here. There's enough. This school probably needs $30 million to refreshen it.
It could be used by the district and by us.
It could be used by district guys, and then you would separate out the containers and would replace them with something else, more permanent.
So keep in mind, you're talking about the people that have just sent us a bill for $500,000 for the space just the way it is.
But realistically,
no, but
I try to find a building for $20 million in this neighborhood, and it was in a 5-mile radius. I think it's impossible.
no, I think that's the thing, is that we can't be restricted to a 5-mile radius. The long-term survivability of this organization can't be.
Absolutely, it's
can't be real. It can't be based on boundaries. It has to be based on what's practical and what serves the needs of students and allows the program to thrive. I think that's the conversation, because if we continue to be in this space, it's
impossible.
It's impossible.
Yeah, and that's a huge question, right?
Unless you find somebody who's giving you $20 million up front to mimic the burden and either develop, you can use it in development costs, you can use it in down payment. If you find an angel investor or a combination of angel investors who are willing to upfront, then you can finance the balance, I would say, realistically speaking. But in the absence of, unless you're selling your company and, just investing it in the school.
That'll be awfully generous of him.
Let's see the budget first, Frank.
Land, zoning, like, can you build a school? Is there like a special, what's the distinction for the zoning for build a school?
Yeah, as Frank was saying before, like for most, it needs to be e-occupancy, and in a residential area, it's not going to qualify. In most commercial areas, it will. So in order to be able to build in a residential area, you would need the conditional use permit that we talked about before, and that's the hundreds of thousands of dollars and a year's worth of headache and consultants. The other big number to focus on here as well is your net income. That's your revenues less your expenses. A lot of the money to pay for the facility is going to come from SB 740, but you got to look at that plus your net income. And so to the extent that you can get this higher, if there's any way to control costs, and any $100,000 out of there helps you afford a lot more.
But just share that on there, you'll notice it's not listed as under total new revenue, because we had 182,000 in good last year, but we're this year we we had a budget that was projected to come in negative.
You are the last party in the conference.
And so it did not get put into that, but the point's well taken. The more we can come to the positive and build our net income year over year, we're going to be in a far better position to be.
Well, I think there's a valid point there, right? It's the net operating. So this revenue of $4 million is heavily subsidized through fundraising already. Community fundraising to fundraising.
Like the what you were just talking about before, the $500,000.
Yes.
The couple items ago.
So that's already baked in there. But we have expenses this year, which was because we're investing into a growing of a program, and so this budget. You know, if you break it even on a program without the fundraising, that's the goal, and then you can start fundraising on top of it. So the program needs to change. The program needs to change in order to get to that level, right? So I think there is a way, and then you need to project it because we have the restriction to the maximum enrollment for the middle school. So you need to project it out. So from now where we are to where we need to be, what do you think is the time frame to get the ratios in a 3 years in a certain amount? If we were to develop a strategic plan and start fundraising and start looking at gap funds,
Yes.
Funding gap, is that a really realistic time frame?
Something on the order of 3 to 5 years, I think. Yeah, because especially if you're going to have enrollment growth, to the extent you can start having some of that earlier. Perhaps you can't in this site, but trying to increase this, trying to improve your cash balance. That's one thing that I'm not sure if you shared with John what your current cash balances are. That's another credit metric that goes into this.
Yeah.
Not that you'd really want to put money into the project, because it's a lot cheaper to borrow it than to put in your hard-earned money. But you do want to have a fair amount on hand just to as a rainy day fund, and frankly all the investors are going to require you to have a certain minimum liquidity threshold.
So I'm just going to kind of get a time check. We have 4 or 5 more slides, I think, if we can.
Yeah, let's fly through. I actually do have a hard stop as well.
I did not, one of the things I did not see is the options, the variables, you know what I mean? Co-location, hybrid, Prop 39, slide that talks about the different schools that have taken different approaches. So you can continue, but I think that's something we should maybe touch on today. Otherwise, next time's fine.
Okay. I think a lot of this we just talked about in terms of different considerations. How projects get funded. There's different ways to borrow, short term, long term. A fair number of charter schools use CDFI or bank loans, which are often about 7 years in length. The great thing about bonds is you can borrow 35, almost 40 years with no interest rate risk. So you're locking it in. You have the option to refinance in the future, but not the obligation.
So can I ask about real estate investors, in the hospitality section, they buy an asset, right? Certain price, market price. Then they do refresh it, and then they can grow their revenue, right? And that's what you need, the coverage, right? So similar principle, right? Your coverage, your additional revenue based on the investment you make, is that? So it's a coverage, right? So you need to grow your revenue based on your site on a per student basis. Sorry,
So
we can have that later.
Yeah, the coverage in what we showed before is just having a buffer of how much your net income is over your payments. In terms of the way that investors look at these deals, they don't look at it so much as the real estate, the value of the real estate, but they look at it on your annual cash flow and your ability to make your payments.
Right.
Because these deals are always, the loan to value is always over 100%.
Okay.
They're always letting you borrow more than the project is worth.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. And then we have a few case studies here. City Charter, we talked a little bit about before. They're the one that started with a turnkey developer and then ended up financing the project and construction on their own. This is 18,000 square foot over in West Adams. This is enrollment of about 435. And so to think about sort of scale, so they have an enrollment of about what you guys have now, and they financed about 12 and a half. So, you know, kind of doubling both of those kind of gets to where we were.
But that's
in
West
whatever.
Adams.
Yeah. Yep, different real estate market end several years ago.
What year?
That was 2016. Real Journey Academies. This was in San Bernardino, so in terms of cost-wise, no comparison. But this was done as a turnkey development. The developer bought this old Kmart building and converted into a master middle school, high school campus, which was really nice. So we don't have the timeline. So that's the end of what we had here. So Yasir, you mentioned a matrix of different what schools had done. Okay, I know the slide that you're talking about, so we can get that to you.
There's some missing in the timeline.
Yeah, I just realized the timeline somehow evaporated.
Thank you, Guillermo.
My pleasure. Any?
So, I'd just like to kind of wrap up by saying this is the first conversation that we've had to kind of look at, you know, we have a spreadsheet that Stifel has sent us. I think the finance committee should start looking at it, plugging stuff in. I think the other thing to do is keep in mind that there have been a lot of organizations like ours that have done the same kind of self-reflection on what is the organization, you know, what is our vision, and keep an open mind as far as what it's going to take, because I think we're all in agreement that the structure, the current structure of the organization, the way it is with LAUSD, is untenable. But I think there's lots of other conversations to be had about, you know, what does our school really want in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years.
Do we still have a second expansion committee, or is that dormant now?
It is dormant right now.
So that's something that we could reactivate?
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not confident. Okay, it's all good. I'm very skeptical about these things, very, very skeptical. Again, I think we're missing funding of about $5 million at the bottom.
I think what Yasir was trying to say, though, is that if we have a vision, we can formulate a strategy and then start taking steps.
Agreed.
Because it won't happen unless we do those things.
No, we did play around with these, not play around, we took serious money in our hands and tried to develop it. Learned the hard way.
And I think that's the other part of the message, is that when you're playing with this much money, it's not time to play, it's time to...
No, I mean, I'd say, I misspoke probably, I would
Yeah.
say we took a serious look, but I think the one thing which is, you know, when they say the value, the value of money over time, right, the time value of money, you know, you have to have time. You have to have time on this in order to be considerate and to turn every stone twice, because you don't want to be pressured into jumping on projects and don't understand the political environment, do not understand, you know, the land use consultants piece of it. That is really driving everything.
Well, I think I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately this is the first of many conversations.
Oh, I agree.
You know
so,
what I mean?
I'm not saying, but it's...
Yeah, and it's also saying that, you know, there is something to be said about using professional organizations that do this, that guarantee success of projects, but that comes at a price.
Right.
And those are all things that we have to consider as we kind of take our steps forward in a measured way. So.
And on that note, yes, Sarah, we'd be happy to connect you with some of the development partners that we've worked with to talk to.
Chris
Who are you?
Yeah, Red Hook and, right? Chris, who else?
Red Hook is
We
one.
met with Red Hook,
Yeah.
as one of the, potential.
One of the other very active turnkey developers is Turner Impact Capital.
Well, they were here.
So we've done a number of projects with the both of them. They're also, individuals who are do development consulting and would help you along the way, but are not going to be putting up capital, to pay for soft costs and things like that. So, with folks like that, we could connect you with as well. But
So if the 10% of the soft cost of a project of a $20 million project or a $30 million project, if you have to fund the soft cost or split it with someone, you are in for $1.5 million. Right about.
it's real money.
It's real money. And so, that money can come from donation and from a strategy, right?
Right.
You say, and then you front this, and so you get to a point where you say, okay, we need to capital fundraise campaign for that amount of money because we need that money in order to develop a site in that thing.
Right.
And it takes you, and then you put a real timeline out there. That money you can fundraise. And then from there you can maybe build momentum for other funds for down payment and stuff. I think as an organization, looking back 3 or 4 years when we were trying to do the same thing, we are in a much better place than we were before. Because we did bring somebody in we asked the question, okay, how do we do a capital campaign? Because we were aware of we became aware of this process, and they said, you guys are nowhere close. That was the assessment. But now, with our marketing campaign, with our campaign, and it's credit to Lucio and Michael, it was our endeavor to curtail costs and to bring people up, bring their enrollment up. That is the key aspect. So we need to get someone that needs to start here and do the basics. That'll get us to the point, right? But we need to get out of this limited space kind of problem we have, and here again, catch-22. So I personally believe, and I'm just making a prediction here, we probably have to accept a 2-campus solution for a temporary time.
No, and I think that's the thing. And as far as next steps, and that's why that next slide was very crucial, is what have other charter schools done? Having 1 site, 2 sites, 3 sites,
Right.
One small, church site for their TK up to 3rd grade, and then larger sites for, different
Right.
combinations.
Yeah, and actually, in that note, City Charter Schools was a split campus until they built the new one,
Right.
so that they were able to.
Ocean Charter probably too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not saying that we're gonna build this, like my first slide, when our aim in this board should be to build a school from K through 12
No.
and get, an acre or 3 acres or 50,000 square feet. I think our focus, at least this year, should be to lay out those measured steps
Oh,
that say,
I agree with you 100%.
this is how we're gonna do it, and this is our long-term strategic plan to move the organization.
Yeah.
So, well,
Thank you so
very
much. I need to run to the
Thank you.
airport.
Yep.
Pleasure to
Much
meet you all.
appreciated.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Chris.
I think the other thing we need to look at is what locations are palatable that are outside of LAUSD.
You can always change the authorizers if Kingdom County.
No, but I think that's an important step as well, because clearly, you see the political climate in LAUSD, probably not changing very rapidly. So I think,
and this is what I was saying, and I've said it to I think I mentioned it in another board meeting, that UTLA has recognized that the attrition in the schools, the children are leaving, they're going to private schools, they're going to charter schools, and charter schools are a major threat that can't attack private schools as much. And the LAUSD board has recognized the same. So they're aligning themselves for their long-term survivability as well, and it makes sense. Their hope is that in the next 5 years that their programs are going to start offering the things that we've cultivated, that we've proven, and they're just going to steal the kids right back. And that's their goal, is to
that's perfectly fine. There's nothing like competition to improve the product, and that's what you want.
That is actually true, but the competition is,
Oh, when it's rigged against your...
yeah, I mean, if we're, McDonald's and Taco Bell, and, we're McDonald's, but we're in Taco Bell's store, you know what I mean, and they charge us rent. It's only so many
And penalties.
And that, well, and then there's so many combinations of hamburgers we can make to compete. So,
Sorry for making vodka less, but that's really
Okay, where do we go from here now?
Well, if I can
Yeah, go ahead.
chime in, we really just wanted to start the conversation because this has been a dormant conversation, and I think that the things that we're looking at are just going and buying something outright right now. We're way off the mark in terms of having enough to get us actually started. But if we start thinking about some other options, maybe looking at our radius beyond 5 miles, but extending that to 10 miles around here, and that we can kind of see if there are any opportunities in markets that are a little bit less costly than right in this direct area. Political winds have shifted dramatically in the last year. We've seen that, but they can also shift back. And over time, we've got to live through this time. But I don't want to completely count out the idea of is there an opportunity here on this campus to do something extraordinary? It would take a lot of political will. It would take a lot of.
Tell them they can have their $500,000 for a lease for 30 years.
So, but I would, but I
I'm
was
not
going to
gonna-
say honestly.
Don't write it down, just say.
You know, I think I can give you, if I finally get out back, Bert, yeah, there is this space out there. It's just, you know, you can't be restricted by the neighborhood too much because it's titled in. That's the,
well, and that's what I mean. Just
and then I think this is something where you can say, okay, you find somebody for going, look at this marijuana. What if we bring in this and we become good partners and we get out of here and we share the facility in regards to the field, right? We do all these things and being good neighbors.
I mean,
you're never gonna argue. And also, this argument the UTLA is bringing forward is the dilution of funds or the diversion of funds, which goes to other schools which we could operate ourselves. That argument you're never going to overcome, right? Because they're saying, we're giving the money to a competition, we produce ourselves, right? So they're going to fight this tooth and nail to every little aspect, every little mechanism they find. But there could be a way forward here. I think it's in this facility. I honestly believe it's the only way forward.
Well,
I think
there's
it's
something
an
to such
interesting
that you can,
thing to explore.
yeah, if you can pitch improvement not only your own facility, their facility, which makes it more attractive for people to come back to this school. The problem is you're competing in grades, so that's a bit of an issue. But you have to help them develop a program that's distinct from our program. So if they have the Mandarin program, we have German, well, then you can coexist a lot more readily.
Are they going to do that? I don't know.
Look at Westminster Elementary. They have a huge campus and a tiny little elementary school.
Westchester High School too.
Anyway,
That's cool.
okay, we started the conversation.
Okay. So, on that note, anything else? Anything? We have calendar topics for next board meeting. Please check the.
so there's a calendar topic that I want to bring up, which is related to June, because there are new requirements for the LCAP, which require that there be both a public hearing and then a separate meeting, and both need to be regular meetings. They need to be set up. So I think we just need to take a look at your June calendars. We can come back in February and determine what it's going to be. but I just want everyone to be aware we're going to need to set 2 meetings in June. And the question would be whether we, probably keep the meeting that we have, but then where do we put the other meeting? Do we put it just after that? Do we try to do it before?
On that note, just in our calendar, that's already noted that we need to have 2 meetings, and that was one of the considerations, but we will also probably need to have 2 meetings in May, and potentially an additional one in April. So take a look at there have been a few things that we've been tabling and pushing, but we may need to do a couple more. So.
When are we getting more board members?
What? I'm sorry?
When are we getting more board members?
Well, the next meeting, we're going to talk about, we're going to review the board development committee charter, which charter was formulated and adopted last year. But we should look at that charter and make some revisions and approve it, and then we can start appointing members and get them going on the business of appointing new board members.
I got 2 waiting there.
Perfect. Excellent. People that want to join, a lot of people that
Until they
wanna
come
join.
here, we'll see.
No, have them come join one of our board meetings. It'll be great.
This is
All right.
better than last year.
I think a
Okay.
little civility will do, huh?
Yeah, I think we're doing good so far.
If there is nothing further, then I will adjourn.
No.
A motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second that.
Beacon made the motion, Frank seconded it. Meeting is adjourned at 9 o'clock. Thank you, everybody.
You assumed that everybody was in favor of that, you know.
I did.
I don't want to do it longer.
Me too.